All right, so let's head back. We're going all the way back to 1907 in New York City. The married couple William Chester of Minnesota and Christina Jensen of Denmark give birth to William L. Chester. By 1930, Chester is working as a clerk at a bank, and he's married to Irene Lang, and I don't think they had any kids. By 1940, Chester changes his career to a skating instructor, which really helped him because during World War II, he served with the ski troops at Camp Hill, Colorado. He then became like a real estate agent and worked as a admin assistant at the Westchester Medical Center in New York. So you're probably asking, like, what's the point of all this, right? I'm asking that question too. It turns out William L. Chester was a part-time author. He wrote a series of novels, or really a serials, that spawned a 3.5 hour film, which also kind of morphed into an edited television movie. And I've got the scoop for you, so let's talk about it. So Chester's first publication appeared in Blue Book magazine in April 1935. It was the first of a 7-part serial called Hawk of the Wilderness, and that ran from April through October 1935. This serial was the debut of a character called Kioga. Again, I'm not sure about the name. It's K like King, I like Igloo, O like Oscar, G like girl, A like apple. So Kioga, I'll say Kioga. This character was inspired by Tarzan and features a warrior Kioga living among Native American tribes, but in a lost land in the Arctic. The serial was then placed into a hardcore. I'm listening. What am I talking about? Wrestling. The serial was then placed into a hardcover novel by Harper and Brothers, and then published in 1936. This serial and book was extremely popular, so popular that Republic Pictures was a big deal back then. Republic Pictures bought the rights and launched a 12-part serial titled Hawk of the Wilderness, starring Herman Brix, and this was in 1938. Coincidentally, Brix had played as Tarzan in a serial called The New Adventures of Tarzan back in 1935, so he's like perfect for the role, right? Later, a TV version of the same name was released with the title Lost Island of Kioga. The book was even reprinted by Grosset and Dunlop to tie in with the movie. At the same time, Ace Books gets into the show, and they issue a paperback of the original hardcover, but as a mass market paperback under the original name of Hawk of the Wilderness. What a messy publication. But anyway, are you still with me so far? Because we're not done with old Kioga. William L. Chester goes back to the well again, and he pens a sequel serial called Kioga of the Wilderness. And it ran from April to October 1936 in Blue Book. Which was Blue Book, which was the one that it was originally in. Dahl Books, legendary sci-fi publisher, fantasy publisher. Dahl Books published this serial in paperback format in 1976. Then another serial starring the character was written as One Against the Wilderness. And again, that appeared in Blue Book magazine from March through August 1937. Dahl Books published this serial in paperback in 1977. Note that with this book, it's a collection of linked short stories starring the main character, Kioga. Then another serial appeared in Blue Book from March through August 1938 called Kioga of the Unknown Land. As you can imagine, this was also published as a paperback by Dahl in 1978. So that's it for Kioga, but there's still a little bit more on William L. Chester. So he also had one other story published, and it was called Not to the Swift, and it was included in the October 1938 issue of Adventure. But I want to get you, let me pull it up here. Bear with me for just a moment. I've got something else I want to share with you on William L. Chester. As I was kind of rooting around and finding things about this author and about Kioga, I discovered that he wrote a letter that was published in the December 3rd, 1936 edition of the New York Times. And it's a letter that he wrote under the title In Defense of the Pulps. So, In Defense of the Pulps. And it's a really cool letter. And in a way, it kind of describes everything that we do here at Paperback Warrior and that we hold kind of, as a high regard in terms of literature. And I can't tell you how many people ask me, like, what I'm reading. And I'll tell them, I'm reading, whatever it is, some kind of vintage paperback. And they sort of scoff at it. And they, they demand to know why I'm not reading, James Patterson or Colleen Hoover or something like that. And, people sometimes criticize the books that we read because we're kind of weird. We read some, a lot of different things. We don't just read the flavor of the month. So, a lot of people don't like genre fiction. They don't like that. In fact, in my interview with I can't even think of his name now. What am I thinking? Ralph Hayes. Interviewed Ralph Hayes, and he had came to the defense of genre fiction, and he pointed out that a lot of fantastic, critically acclaimed authors wrote genre fiction. So anyway, Chester apparently found some fault with the previous article that someone had written. I can't remember the name of the writer, but someone had written a sort of a column in the New York Times criticizing the pulp magazines and what kind of influence they have on the readers. So let me read you what I've got here. So I'm going to read you this letter, and it's a short letter. Just bear with me. It's a short letter, but I think you'll like it. I wish I could read it in Tom's old man voice. Remember Tom when he would do the old man voice? I can't do that, so I'm not even going to bother to try, but I'm going to read this to you. It says, to the editor of the New York Times. In the New York Times of November 29th, Miss Anita P. Forbes is quoted as stating that the material found in pulp magazines constitutes a menace to high school pupils' morals, English, and minds. Many will recognize the particular class of pulp magazine to which Miss Forbes refers and agree with her conclusions. But I wish that for accuracy's sake, she had used a more correct term like certain pulp magazines, so as not erroneously to condemn those which are offering good and often excellent fiction. I would further call her attention to the fact that stories from pulp magazines have found places and frequently in collections published from year to year as representative of the best. Moreover, magazines not designated as pulps are not always found immaculate in the matter of printing material which might be called objectionable. How is it fair arbitrarily to condemn thrills in stories? Treasure Island, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and The Three Musketeers all provided thrills, helped while away idle hours, and required no profound mental effort from the reader. Indeed, ease of reading is one of the goals of many writers, involving considerable art and great pains in composition. Simply because a story is easily grasped and does not weary the brain, it does not follow that it must be demoralizing. It is also worth remembering that the pulp magazines, so sweepingly condemned, have been the training ground for authors famous for the literary caliber of their work, not to mention winners of coveted literary prizes. Nor do all pulp magazines limit or restrict their pages to beginners. The work of Carl Sandburg, Lowell Thomas, Ahmed Abdullah, and others are to be found in the pulps along with that of less famous names. James Baum, official hunter and historian of the Field Museum Expedition, has appeared there, as has Alfred Bailey, director of the Chicago Academy of Sciences. So that this correction may have its constructive side, why discourage the reading of inexpensive magazines which are offering good fiction at small cost? Aside from the injustice of an unwarranted antagonism, it is worth recalling that inclusion on a forbidden list often booms a book beyond its intrinsic worth. If suggestion is acceptable, why not a high school reading board composed of sympathetic adults to discover good reading material, both fact and fiction, with a view to a publication under a single cover with the permission of the several copyright owners? Afforded opportunity to absorb the best so simply, it may reasonably be hoped that the reader will learn to discriminate between the best and its antonym. William L. Chester, New York, December 1st, 19